An Insurrection by Jim Musgrave. Dedicated to the veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts. Winner of Best New Writing Award in the 2011 Eric Hoffer Short Fiction Competition. My name is Umar Muhammad Khayyam. I am an Arabic translator and United States Marine Corps Sergeant, working with the 2nd Battalion 4th Marines out of Okinawa, Japan. We were forward deployed during the first days of the war. This war is now called Operation Iraqi Freedom, but we knew it then as Operation Infinite Justice. Our platoon's job that day in 2003 was to secure the clock tower of Saddam Hussein in downtown Baghdad. One might say it was ironic because the office of the judge who was later to condemn Saddam to death was eventually to be located here, inside what was later to become the Green Zone. But that day I was to meet Amir Hammurabi, who was to become the centerpiece of my story. When my platoon entered the top floor of the clock tower, we found a man huddled in the corner in a fetal position. He was quite skinny, and he stared up at us as if we were ghosts. Another man, a man who could have been Saddam Hussein's double, was dead on the other side of the room. I thought, at first, that perhaps there might have been foul play, but when Amir began speaking, I immediately took pity on him. He started crying about his family. He wanted to know where his wife, Sharzad, and his son, Muhammad, were. He kept asking this over and over, and he also asked us if we were going to kill him. We did not kill Amir. In fact, he became a translator, working with me for the next 8 months inside Baghdad. I didn't know the local dialect, and Amir was an educated man, even though he was obviously suffering from post-traumatic stress of some kind. In fact, he did not remember who he was in his former life, and he did not even know who his family was. All he remembered were their names. I became very concerned about Amir because he had no quality of life. He would spend his off hours sulking about inside the Green Zone and staring up at the big clock tower, as if it, somehow, held the key to his lost identity. I was curious about this, as my father was a psychiatrist in San Diego, and I believed perhaps my father could provide some answer to this poor man's mental anguish. As a result, I emailed my father, who practices out of the University of California at San Diego's Medical Center, and my father immediately responded. "Dear Umar," he said, "I want you to connect me with the Marine Corps doctor in Baghdad. I have an idea that may be able to help your friend find his identity. We need to hypnotize him and give him a dose of Amital. This therapy has worked quite well with the veterans I have treated, and I have a hunch your friend has a similar trauma." On the day we treated Amir, we had experienced some mortar fire on the Green Zone. There were 3 suicide bombers who killed 15 civilians and wounded 20, and 5 Marines had been killed from improvised explosive devices, IED. It was a good day in Baghdad. Amir seemed fearful of what was going to happen, but I assured him he would be much better off if he were able to remember his past. I told him my father had described a drug that was being considered by the Department of Defense. Instead of allowing a person to remember, this drug caused one to forget. My father said he was doing all he could to get this drug off the market. He believed the key to mental health was in being able to relive a traumatic event and not to cover it up with drugs. Sadly, our society seemed to want to cover up everything these days, and we were paying for this denial big time. Dr. Forsyth met us in his office, and there was a big screen digital display of my father's smile beaming out at us. "You can speak to him. He can hear us, and we can hear him," said the colonel, as he escorted Amir to the couch. "Hey, Dad," I said, and my father waved. "Hi, son." Amir reluctantly extended his arm, and Dr. Forsyth injected him with the Amital. Like big brother, my father began to instruct Dr. Forsyth about how to proceed. "The patient will become receptive in about 5 minutes, when the drug will reach its zenith potency. You must instruct him to relive his days before the invasion of Iraq. This is the key to his memory and to his trauma. If we can get him to experience this period, he may become receptive to further therapy." "Yes, sir," said Dr. Forsyth. Soon, Amir became agitated, and the colonel walked over to him and sat on a chair next to the couch. Amir was wide awake, but his eyes were glassy, and his voice was distant. "Instruct him to go back to 2003 and the invasion," my father said. "Amir, do you hear me?" said Dr. Forsyth. Yes, Amir said, but he soon began speaking Arabic, and the colonel motioned for me to sit beside him. I dragged another chair over. Tell him it is 2003 and the bombing of Baghdad has begun. He is in his apartment, and he is to describe what is taking place, said Dr. Forsyth. I translated this into Arabic, and Amir soon closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice trembled with emotion, and its content will live with me forever. The following is a transcription of his words, and these words were all kept on a digital recording. My father and Dr. Forsyth often play it for other psychiatrists at conventions, and a copy is even being circulated for publication in the leading medical journals. My father believes it was a breakthrough in the treatment of psychotic amnesia, but I believe it gave my friend Amir a final connection with his family. Amir now lives with us in San Diego, and he is able to function normally. I am being called back for another tour of duty in Iraq, but Amir's message may be able to reach some of you, I hope. Even though we were able to save this man's sanity, we may not be able to save his country, unless we can see what we are doing to its people. Before the ultimatum date passed, we were the same as we had been before the Desert Storm and the Desert Fox of 1991. We all knew the bombing would begin soon, as the city was beginning its ritual of preparations. However, this time, the end was going to come, and we secretly hoped it would not happen to us. Perhaps it might happen to them, the exclusives who parade in their olive green uniforms and their Kalashnikov rifles at the gas stations, watching to see that the right citizens with the right identification got their petrol. I am still one of the right people, as I am an architect here in Baghdad, a widower, living with my father and young son in an apartment about 5 kilometers from the Grand Festival Square, where there are 2 huge, intersecting swords at the entrance to the Grand Stand. This is one of the impressive sights I have helped to construct. We watched the army parade there last winter. The road to the right of the Grand Stand is the Olive Street, Zaytun, lined with olive trees, where the houses of the Harthia, the big wigs of the Ba'ath party, lived until recently. They are vacant now, like most of Saddam's palaces, collecting sand from the storms and dreams from the days when Iraq was a thriving country of socialists and progressives. The secret police ended all of that. We all know when the B-52s are coming. The first night they bombed, I was panicked. My father, Ibrahim, is 72 and hard of hearing, so when the ground begins to rumble from the attacks, he just kneels on his prayer rug and supplicates. It takes 6 hours for the bombers to get here from Great Britain, a spin around the block as it were. As the bombers drop their explosives, I remember the bombings before, when I was a young man working for the younger Saddam in his war against the religious fanatics in Iran. My wife was alive then, and our son was only 3. The bombing terrified us. I remember picking my son up as he was screaming uncontrollably, and I put my hand over his heart. His little heart was pounding inside his chest like the rumbling booms we were hearing outside. I remember, while attending college, reading somewhere in an Indian guru's book that we all have the universe inside of us, and if we can control that inside universe, then we can control what we do outside as well. My family had hell inside us in our war with Iran, and now this same hell has returned to us again. The Ba'ath party members are now lining up to serve in the trenches surrounding Baghdad. I saw them forming at the intersections, and their excited gesticulations made them appear as the puppets of Saddam that they truly are. They look too clean-shaven and prim to be serving on the front lines. However, they have also recruited many young men, some who look to be under 20 years of age, and these boys are sitting in the trenches sipping their Miranda fizzy drinks and eating chocolate. These young people look so innocent until you spot the Kalashnikovs cradled in their arms. War turns the innocence of youth into the hardened faces of men. My one claim to fame is the construction of the Clock Tower of Baghdad. I was awarded my state pension and my apartment following the completion of this monument in 1996. We began the work on the tower in 1986, but when the first Gulf War started, after the invasion of Kuwait in 1990, we had to halt our construction. However, after our defeat, in 1992, the construction was ordered to continue by none other than Saddam Hussein himself. When we finally completed it, I was to get my first meeting with President Hussein. He came out to the clock tower in a motorcade surrounded by some of his elite Republican guards. I stood on the steps leading up into the first of the 3 stories of the museum, which housed all of Saddam's gifts from other heads of state and memorabilia from war. Above the museum was the 150-foot tower, enclosing the giant clock. As the clock in the 150-foot tower began chiming the tune from a popular anthem to President Saddam Hussein, a group of visiting schoolgirls provided the words, "There is a covenant between us and you." The girls recited dutifully, a line from the song familiar to almost all 22 million Iraqis. The Baghdad Clock Tower, with its 7 exhibition halls, gold-plated statues of falcons, and many portraits of Saddam, plays the song on the hour 24 times a day. Schools arrange visits to the site, whose entrance is adorned with gold-plated inscriptions of Saddam telling of his pride that the tower was built despite a lack of funds, a shortage caused by sanctions the United Nations imposed on Iraq after the Kuwaiti invasion. Everything in the monument celebrates or pertains to the president's life and deeds. Those 4 rifles waving with the pendulum are made of pure gold and belong to 4 martyrs who fell in defense of Iraq in the Iraq-Iran War. I told Saddam on the day I took him on a tour of his museum and tower. In fact, the rifles were real weapons plated in gold for display at the tower. For the hundreds of girls and boys touring the Baghdad clock that day, a visit echoes what textbooks say about their leader. Documents written in blood hang on the walls and tell the children about the loyalty Iraqis across the nation feel toward Saddam. As I strolled around my creation with him that day, I was the happiest man alive. The most powerful man in our country was appreciating my work, and my family would be very proud of the life pension and residence with which I was being rewarded for this work. However, just before he was about to leave, he turned to me and smiled, his giant, Stalinesque mustache spreading beneath his swarthy nose. What he then said gave me an ominous feeling of doom. Indeed, it has been a prophetic bookmark in my life, and I gauge all that has changed in my life from that moment. "Mr. Hammurabi, isn't it?" our noble leader asked. "Yes, my president," I said. "I really like the way the anthem plays around the tower so the children can hear it as they walk by. That was a nice touch. My engineers have worked hard to get the speakers positioned just so," I pointed out. "Yes, you have. Now, I want all of Baghdad to hear this anthem. Do you understand? If my name is on the lips of every soul, then I shall be close to their hearts as well. Don't you agree?" I saw his chest puff out at that moment. That's when I had my stroke of genius. "Oh, yes, sir. I have an idea. We can rig the chime song to all the air raid siren speakers around the city. Then, all 5 million citizens will be able to hear your anthem every hour of the day." The president nodded and walked toward his motorcade. I knew he was pleased, and my life would never be the same. The coalition bombs are landing with much more devastation these days. A market was hit, and over 50 people were blown apart. There is no meat left in Baghdad, and one is lucky to get any vegetables. We have a refrigerator filled with water bottles and tomatoes. I understand that the sophisticated missiles being used against Baghdad are worth more money than the buildings they are hitting. However, I ask myself, how much is one human life worth? I suppose lives become cheap during times of war. At least, it feels this way whenever I am standing alone, in the dark, listening to the hellacious explosions raining down on my beloved city. Years of creativity and work are instantly being turned into twisted metal and charred ruins. Does the world appreciate our culture? Do they know we created the 60-minute hour? Our Babylonian Empire was one of the most culturally advanced in the history of the world. We invented the 360-degree circle. We had the miraculous hanging gardens. In fact, Saddam once called me from one of his palaces and told me he would be offering a special award to any architect or engineer who could duplicate the hanging gardens on his wall. Saddam was referring to the description of the gardens by Diodorus Siculus, the Greek historian, 585 BC. His record says, "The approach to the garden sloped like a hillside, and the several parts of the structure rose from one another tier on tier. On all this, the earth had been piled, and was thickly planted with trees of every kind that, by their great size and other charm, gave pleasure to the beholder. The water machines raised the water in great abundance from the river, although no one outside could see it. The president of Iraq wanted an engineer to duplicate a feat that modern historians say was never accomplished. According to many modern experts, however, the gardens of Babylon never existed, except in the minds of the poets of a bygone era. As a result, no person ever won Saddam's award. It was just another one of his empty promises. My wife and I were both professionals who worked for Saddam. Shahrzad, my wife, was a professor of quantum physics for 14 years until we were finally able to conceive. In 1991, when the first war with the United States began, she was in labor. We made a joke about the 15 hours spent in the delivery of Muhammad, our son. As the explosions from the bombs rocked the hospital in Baghdad, Shahrzad screamed into the sheet that she clutched in her mouth, and I watched, helplessly, as our son came into this world. I thought at the time, my son, what a world we have for you. Shahrzad stayed home after our son was born. She became obsessed with the creation of a novel about an Iraqi scientist who discovers a way to travel in time. I have the book with me, and it is called Timekeeper. Let me read some for you, as it has a great importance for these days of war. Dr. Ali Hussein realized he could save his country by building a device that could transport humans into the realities of the three levels of the multiverse, as postulated by modern quantum physics. The theory says that we have multi-levels of existence, existing at the same moment, but each has a slightly different outcome or reality. Dr. Hussein began his book on the subject of parallel universes by asking a question: is there a copy of you reading this book? A person who is not you, but who lives on a planet called Earth with misty mountains, fertile fields, and sprawling cities, in a solar system with 8 other planets? The life of this person has been identical to yours in every respect, but perhaps he or she now decides to put down this book without finishing it while you read on. After many years, Dr. Hussein had created his invention, the antimatter reactor and multiverse display. Inside his ingenious device, Dr. Hussein could view the infinite possibilities of his own existence. The consequences were remarkable. Dr. Hussein saw that a universe existed for every physical possibility. There were Earths where the Nazis prevailed in the Second World War, where Marilyn Monroe married Einstein, and where the dinosaurs survived and evolved into intelligent beings. And at the Level 1 multiverse, or state of consciousness, Dr. Hussein saw himself, existing in a different pattern of reality in another galaxy, somewhere in the distant past or the unforeseeable future. At the Level 2 multiverse, he saw this Level 1 multiverses expanding into every possible configuration and possibility on other planets in other galaxies of outer space. In one, insects were the superior beings, in another there was a world of water, in another, a world of gas, and on ad infinitum. Finally, at the Level 3 multiverse, Dr. Hussein was able to see that these parallel multiverses were in the present. He could see them, and they formed an infinite, mathematically certain pattern that caused him to enter into a state of harmonic bliss. What all the religious gurus of all times were able to see, but they were unable to communicate to their followers. Jesus must have seen this Level 3 when he was on Earth, as did the Buddha and Muhammad. When Abraham was about to slay his son, Isaac, the Level 3 multiverse interrupted him, and thus we experience the wisdom of the Bible. It was a brilliant plan. Dr. Hussein was going to let each leader in the world experience his invention until he or she entered the state of eternal bliss that he had experienced. No longer would they believe they were powerful or politically correct. Instead, the instant karmic reality of Level 3 consciousness would send the infinite world into a state of total understanding and infinite peace. I stand in the dark alone, without my wife's book, as the lights have gone out, as my father has taken my son to the market to get tomatoes. I am thinking about the destruction all around me and about Dr. Hussein in my wife's novel. Her body was rendered into infinite parts one day during our war with America. She was sitting outside writing her novel, which was never completed. Perhaps she is finishing it in another multiverse? Saddam has his clock tower. He also has my wife, who was blown apart during his war. He never reached Level 3. Will I? I go to the cabinet and pull down the last tomato. As I bite into the wrinkled, yet still juicy fruit, I feel like an initiate described in Hassan bin Sabbath's Cult of the Assassins. The garden lay in a beautiful valley nestled between two high mountains. Here bin Sabbath had imported exotic plants, birds, and animals from all over the world. Surrounding the garden were luxurious palaces of marble and gold, decorated with beautiful paintings and fine silk furniture. Streams of milk, wine, and honey flowed throughout this earthly paradise, while fountains gushed with wine and pure spring water. The initiate, after being knocked out by a powerful potion mixed with hashish, would be carried into the garden. When he awoke from his slumber, he would be greeted by a host of beautiful teenage girls who sang and danced and played lovely instruments for him. As he drifted into an ecstatic daze, the girls would go to work on the initiate, giving him a full-body tongue massage, preparing him for the sacrifice to come. My son and my father have not returned from shopping. The bombing has destroyed most of our street. Ours is one of the few buildings still standing. I can smell the odor of burning oil from the 360-degree pit of flaming hell encircling the city and outside. The orange glow of still burning cinders and building remains greets the dawn. The clock tower chimes have gone berserk. Saddam's anthem is constantly playing through the air raid sirens, and I am going insane from the noise. The bombings do not bother me. I just want to stop those infernal chimes. I shall go there to turn them off for good. There are no people out here in the street at this hour. No, wait. Up ahead, there is an old man. Is it father? No, he is too young. As I come up to him, he waves to me in greeting. Salam alaikum, he tells me. Uncle, have you seen a young boy with an old man? They are my son and father, and they have not returned home for hours. I plead with him. No others are here. Just me. A worthless old man. However, did you hear? Saddam has not been seen on TV. Some say he is dead. Do you think so? Could the end be near at last? He says, and he looks around, expecting the secret police to spring on us at any moment like jackals. Miraculously, the clock tower is still standing. It rises above the city like Big Ben, and the infernal chimes are bellowing forth like the mantra of an insane dictator. As I climb the stairs leading to the topmost room, where the chime mechanism is located, I fumble in my pocket for the keys. Yes, they are still there. I am, after all, one of the right people. I cover my ears from the music as I walk up into the heights of the tower. My father and son have probably become martyrs to Saddam, just the way my wife was offered up many years before. Why do I exist? Oh, yes. I must stop the music of Saddam's anthem. I feel inside that I have the entire cosmos. If I can stop the music, I will have killed Saddam. Yes, that's it. He cannot live without his anthem, and I shall destroy it. The door turns easily as I open the lock, German precision parts. The lights are not working, so I will have to find my way in the dark. The computer box is over by the wall, if I remember correctly. What in blazes? I trip over somebody who is lying out on the floor. Who are you? I ask, finding my book of matches and bringing them out of my pocket. Peace be with you, the man says, and as I strike the match against the cover, the flame ignites, showing me a man in an olive green uniform. The mustache, the dark, dyed hair. The crooked smile of a schoolboy teasing cats. Can it be? Saddam? My president? The music is wonderful, isn't it? He tells me. I feel his neck muscles contract as I strangle him. I am much younger, and he is really no match for my adrenaline high. Instead of stopping the chimes, the music of Saddam, I can kill the real man. Oh, Allah has chosen me to save Baghdad. I am a hero at last. It is dark now, the way it was at the beginning of time. Have I killed him? Yes, I think he is dead. But, wait, he could be one of the many imposters. He could perhaps not be the president at all. Yes, perhaps he is Dr. Ali Hussein. That is it. He is simply a doppelganger, existing in another multiverse. As am I. I am at the computer box and I open it with the special password. It takes one small impression with my forefinger to stop the chimes all over the city. No more music. But is Saddam dead? Will he ever die? Was he ever real? The invading infidels are about to raid the city. They will find him, won't they? Will they find me up here? Will they understand what I have done? I don't know, and I don't care. For the moment, for this moment in my personal hell, I feel exonerated. I feel free. And in the infinite possibilities of the moment, I can see my son, my wife, and my father. They are growing old, getting younger, making absurd choices, loving in an infinite variety of ways, gazing at the seemingly empty space around them, yet knowing, deep inside, that the magic of Hussein's clock tower will live on. And a slight smile comes to all of our shared countenances, and we die, and we are reborn. As I push the button, the music stops, but I am instantly aware of a new light all around me. Sounds have become vibrations that I can feel. Colors can be smelled, and I can hear with incredible exactitude. A woman, holding the hand of a child, walks toward me down a long corridor. I wait. She comes into my cell, and it becomes a grotto. Birds are singing and a waterfall trickles down the sides of the green, cascading hills around us. We have morphed into paradise. It is Sharzad and my son, Muhammad. And soon, as if to complete the miracle, my father, Ibrahim, comes into the light. He is no longer crippled. He walks with pride into my arms. I feel his body, and it is muscular and new, just as it was when I was a youth. And so, when I gaze into the pond before me, I can see I am young again, and the rapturous longing in my heart becomes overcome with joy.